All right, hold on. I think we might have Mr. Stone on the phone. Is this Mr. Stone?
Yes, indeed.
Mr. Stone, Gary Garver, thank you so much for calling. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my apologies. My wife thought she was doing me a favor by turning the bell off on my phone.
That's okay. I really appreciate you. I was just talking about you. And if you don't mind, can we just jump right into it? Okay.
I'm ready.
All right, Mr. Stone, I want to ask you, the first question I have to ask you is, who do you think wrote the op-ed in the New York Times? Who's your gut feeling on who wrote this op-ed, who's anonymous? I think it's a gutless thing to do. Who do you think did this?
Well, instinctively, I must be honest with you, I think no one wrote it. In other words, I think it was written by some staff member of the New York Times.
Really?
I think it's a canard, a fraud, a MacGuffin. And unfortunately, the president has kind of taken the bait. I would have ignored it. The irony, if you read the text of it, is quite funny. The adults are saving the country. These are the same adults who've run the country for the last 30 years. Let's take a look at how they've done. Endless foreign war, where our inherent national interests are not clear, spending billions in lives and treasure. A failed economy, a stagnant economy where there are no jobs. People getting out of college, kids getting out of college have to move in with their parents because there are no opportunities.
And they're in debt to like $100,000, $200,000. It's crazy.
They've given us a student loan crisis. They've given us a housing crisis. Immigration policies that mean our streets and neighborhoods are unsafe. Big international trade agreements that have sucked the jobs out of America that are very good for our trading partners, but not so good for us. Erosion of our civil liberties, or keeping metadata tags on our emails, our text messages, spying on Americans. I mean, it's a record of failure. It's a record of decline. These are the establishment adults who say they're keeping us safe. Well, I see it the other way around. This president has revitalized our economy. We have record job growth, 3.2 million jobs since Donald Trump was elected president. We have record growth in wages. We have almost 5% economic growth. We were told under Barack Obama that was structurally impossible, could not be done. He's bringing America back, and unfortunately that's what he should be talking about, as opposed to dickering with the Washington Post over a phony op-ed that is, I think, really meant as a distraction. We now know that people directly involved in Robert Mueller's investigation, people who are currently on the special counsel staff, were intricately involved in the fabrication of this dossier and the approval of the FISA warrants and the extension of the FISA warrants, which allowed them to use the power of the state to spy on Donald Trump and his campaign.
Since you brought up Robert Mueller, what do you think? Do you think he's going to be fair to the president? I mean, do you think his investigation will be fair? Do you think Robert Mueller is a fair person?
No, I think if you look at his track record, he is the individual who covered up the facts about 9/11. We know that 5 of the hijackers were training in a flight school in Sarasota, Florida, that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement sent numerous notifications to the FBI that something was amiss. They did nothing. Then after the tragedy, they swooped in on a Saudi family that was harboring these men in the Sarasota area, but they had disappeared in the middle of the night, leaving all their private effects behind. Then Mueller signed a report that said that family had no known connections to the 9/11 plot, but we know from documents that were wrenched out of the government by Judicial Watch that that's a lie. So he's, whether it's BCCI, whether it's Lockerbie 103, whether it's the anthrax arrests, whether it's the mob informants for the FBI in the Whitey Bulger matter, Mr. Mueller is a cover-up artist. That's what he does.
Okay.
And don't let his Republican registration fool you. He's a hitman for the deep state. Doesn't matter whether it's the Bushes or the Clintons. They're all in it together anyway.
Okay.
Their policies, their thoughts are identical.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Do you think there's a conspiracy in the White House to invoke the 25th Amendment, removing the president from office? Do you think there's a conspiracy in the White House?
Well, such a conspiracy would only be possible if the president chose some very bad people around him, and unfortunately he has. Why would you appoint Nikki Haley? Nikki Haley, the UN ambassador, who holds cabinet right and would have a vote in such a 25th Amendment showdown, hates Donald Trump's guts.
Really?
Hates everything he stands for, didn't vote for him. Why would you appoint such a woman to high office? You can go through this cabinet, and by my vote count, the president's got 3 votes. But that's what happens when you take the advice of Jared Kushner. That's what happens when you surround yourself with establishment quizzling. I love Donald Trump, but I think he's being ill-served by many of the people that he selected. And therefore, yes, I have said for some time there's a 25th Amendment play afoot here. If the Mueller investigation can find no evidence of Russian collusion, they can't. They can find no misdeed by Donald Trump, they can't. Well, then they will try to remove our president through the constitutional amendment, 25th Amendment, which requires that you need the vice president and a majority of the cabinet. Mike Pence looks to me like he has, as Julius Caesar would say, that lean and hungry look.
So you think Mike Pence might actually be behind this whole movement for the 25th Amendment?
His chief political operative, a guy named Nick Ayers, got caught earlier leaking negative information on the president. When that happened, Vice President Pence's press secretary, communications director, a very fine guy named Mark Lauder, took the fall for Ayers. Ayers hates Donald Trump. Ayers is trying to make Mike Pence president. So it's entirely possible.
Wow.
Here's the only reason why I don't think so. It's highly risky and it would take guts.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, Mike Pence is a cautious politician. He plays it very cautiously. So I don't know that he has the cojones to try something
I'm just going to say that. I don't think Mike Pence has the balls to do it. I think maybe a John Kelly would, but I don't think a Mike Pence would. What do you think of John Kelly?
Well, I mean, look, he thinks that he's put on the earth to save the country from Donald Trump, as opposed to a chief of staff whose job is to carry out the president's orders and try to execute. He tried putting Donald Trump in a cocoon. To a certain extent, he has succeeded. The president's oldest friends, closest friends and supporters, people that worked very hard to get him elected.
Like you.
Well beyond myself, we can't get through to him because he's dining with all the Bush Quislings around him. So, Kelly admits that he voted for Hillary Clinton. He was at a meeting to support Hillary Clinton during the election. I scratch my head as to why you would employ such a man.
So hold on,
it's very hard to understand.
You don't have any conversations with the president anymore?
It has now been some time because his lawyers have urged him not to speak with me. So what I've had to settle for is the president sending me messages through third parties, through mutual friends. When I was on with Chris Cuomo on CNN last night,
I saw it.
I got a message this morning from a mutual friend who said the president saw you, he thought you did great, he loves you, he hopes you're doing well. But I think his lawyers have scared him because, as I think everyone knows, Mr. Mueller is trying to subject me to his inquisition. He can't find any Russian collusion because there is none. He can't find any WikiLeaks collaboration because that's nonsense. And he can't prove that I knew anything about John Podesta's emails. So I think he's very frustrated because he can't find some crime. I can tell you right now what I'm guilty of. I'm guilty of supporting Donald Trump for president. And I'm guilty for being very effective in exposing Hillary Clinton as the greedy, foul-mouthed, short-tempered, entitled, corrupt criminal that she is.
Well, I didn't vote for her, but I have to say, in all honesty, I didn't vote for Donald Trump either. I didn't vote for either one of them because I couldn't buy into any of it. You know, it was so disgusted with the whole thing. You know, but
well, look, I understand that because when Mitt Romney ran against Barack Obama, I couldn't vote for either one of them.
Yeah.
Mainly because their views are identical. They struggle to try to sound different. That's a kabuki dance for the voters. But the truth is their policies on every issue were identical. I voted for Gary Johnson, the Libertarian Party candidate. Proud of it, too.
Hey, what do you think about Paul Manafort and what's going on with him? They're looking. He's looking now to do a plea deal. Do you think he has any information and dirt on the president and the Russian inquiry?
No, I don't think he has whatsoever because there is no Russian collusion. And Manafort would have to make it up. He'd have to perjure himself. That would be bearing false witness. Now, whether he has some information on the activities of Jared Kushner that could be interesting, I don't know. Obviously, Mr. Mueller would like to figure out some way to indict Donald Trump Jr. I don't think Manafort will ever turn against the president. He may, I think at this point, having been destroyed completely financially, just destroyed.
Right.
Destroyed his family. Incarcerating him during his trial. That's a new one on me. They throw you in jail before you've been convicted to make sure you can't defend yourself at trial. Is this Russia or the United States? It's a little confusing.
What about Michael Cohen?
He's a rat. He's a rat.
Well, we know that.
He's a rat. He's a rat, and he's lying. Hey, look, Michael Cohen would never have pled to a questionable campaign finance charge. I mean, in all honesty, let's just say hypothetically that Michael Cohen did pay Stormy Daniels and Donald Trump reimbursed Michael Cohen. At a minimum, that would be an unreported contribution, but that's it. Generally speaking, a $1,000 fine. Donald Trump is entitled to give to his own campaign without limitation. He could have given, Mikey could have reimbursed Michael Cohen $2 million. It still would just be an unreported contribution. If Cohen didn't have bank fraud and tax evasion charges, he would never have pled to the minor campaign finance charge.
You don't think there's any smoke there either? You just think it's a bunch of BS?
Well, no, actually, even if it happened, it wouldn't be illegal, and the voters don't seem to be too upset about it.
Yeah, it's not
It's
criminal
certainly not
act.
criminal. It would be a civil offense.
Hey, so you haven't been called by Mueller, but the weird thing is, Mr. Stone, is that a lot of your people that surround you have been called, but you haven't been called. I find that a little bizarre, don't you? I mean, it's weird.
Well, it may be. It may just be because they understand that under no circumstances would I speak to them under oath, because that's how they trap you. If you said you were wearing a red shirt because that's how you remembered it, you turned out to have worn a blue shirt, then they charge you with lying to the FBI. That's why Donald Trump shouldn't sit down with them. That's why I wouldn't sit down with them. But yes, they have pried into every single aspect of my life, my personal life, my family life, my social life, my business life, my political life, my private life. I thought this was about Russian collusion. I mean, these people tried to interrogate my cleaning lady. FBI agents were seen going through my garbage.
Really?
This has nothing to do with Russian collusion. It has to do with the fact that I wrote a book called The Clintons' War on Women that exposed the epic criminality of Bill and Hillary, and they're still sore about it.
Yeah, and by the way, you also wrote a book, Stone Rules, which I want to promote because it just came out a couple months ago. How's it doing? I know it's one of the best sellers out there.
It's doing pretty well. I mean, this is a different kind of book. It's really not a political book in the sense that, while yes, you can tell my politics by some of the anecdotes I tell, it still would be useful as kind of a field manual or a guidelines, if you will, for anybody. It doesn't matter whether you're in business or politics or media or tech or fashion or agriculture. It doesn't matter what your avocation is. I think young men, young women, people just starting out could benefit enormously from the things that I have learned. Now, some of it's practical. In there, you have the recipe for Dick Nixon's secret silver bullet martini.
That's right. That's right, Roger. Make me one of those.
He made a hell of a martini. Let me make this perfectly clear.
Let me make this perfectly clear.
He made a great martini.
All right, thank you very much. I put a lot of ice, crushed ice, and a lot of vodka.
The old man liked gin, to be honest with
gin.
you.
Oh, I screwed it up. I'm sorry. I've been dead for 30 years.
Hey, listen, is Facebook still banning you from promoting it and all that? Because I remember they were banning you and they were giving you a bunch of crap.
Well, Twitter banned me for life because I hurt Jake Tapper's feelings. The rules on Twitter are very vague, and I will ultimately file suit against them, but I want to let others charge ahead first to see how they fared. A number of the lawsuits that were filed were dismissed, mostly the First Amendment-oriented ones, but some of them have survived, and that's the guide to how to take them in court, which ultimately I will bring an action there. But they may cut their own throats because I think they're busted. The Congress has figured out what they're doing. As far as Facebook is concerned, it's more insidious. I have 180,000 followers. It's Stone Cold Truth. I have the maximum 5,000 on my personal Facebook page. But through the manipulation of the algorithms, they limit your reach. So friends of mine will say, hey, I guess you're not on Facebook anymore because I never get anything from you.
Yeah.
Wow, I say, that's weird. I post every day. You're not seeing that? No, it never comes to me.
Thank you so much for calling in. And you're so honest and you're so real. And I love your answers, man. And they're so real. And you're inside. I don't care when you're still inside the Trump White House, even though you're on the outside.
Well, I think I understand him. He's been a friend of mine for 40 years. But it's important that people recognize he's his own man. There is no Karl Rove in Trump land. There's nobody telling him what to think, what to read, what to say, what to hear. You get the good with the bad, but that's the people the American people elected because they were tired of these cookie-cutter, let's be cautious politicians who gave us nothing but decline.
You're right.
They talk a good game, the Republicans particularly. Oh, we're going to cut spending, but they never really do. things just keep getting worse. So, why not try something different? Yeah, he's a businessman, and he tells it like he sees it. Doesn't always come out right, but it usually comes out right. And the economic results, I think, are there for everybody to see.
Yeah, what would be the one advice you'd give the president if you could? What would be the one piece of information if you could relay it to the president? What would you tell him to do?
Fire Jeff Sessions tomorrow.
Okay.
And tell the new attorney general to mount a task force to study everything Jeff Sessions did and see if you can't figure out why he's collapsed on you. Because Jeff Sessions is either compromised or brain dead. It's one or the other.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and that Jeff Sessions was one of his first supporters, and now it seems like they have a terrible relationship. It's weird, and it's a little strange.
Well, Jeff Sessions he can't be bothered to look at the crimes of Obama or the Clintons because he's too busy trying to bust people for smoking medicinal marijuana.
Yeah, exactly. You're right about we can exactly. It's still a Scheduled I drug along with cocaine and heroin. Give me a break. He is a dope.
Well, I mean, the president was very, very clear in the campaign. He supports the states' rights to make their own decision, and he said if the people choose medicinal, that's the way it should be. But that's not, Jeff Sessions must not have gotten the memo. Jeff Sessions, ladies and gentlemen, a great civil libertarian.
Yeah, well,
what a jerk.
I know. Well, yeah, I'm not a big fan of his either. I've told him he looks like he has a load in his pants, when he's walking around.
He looks like the evil Keebler elf.
Well, listen,
kind of like, he also looks like Yoda in a little
yeah,
bit.
Yoda, yeah, not half as smart.
I said on a speech on Saturday, the president should fire him and send him back from Alabama. I got a petition this morning from 18,000 people in Alabama who said, we don't want him. Tell him not to come here, or we'll meet him at the airport with a rope. I don't think they want him back. They think they're embarrassed by him, as they should be.
I hear you.
Something wrong with this guy.
Yeah. Well, listen, Mr. Stone, I want to thank you so much for calling in. I really appreciate it. Get the book Stone Rules. You can get it on Amazon.com. Thank you so much. It's fascinating to speak with you, and I really enjoy it. And I watch you all the time. I see you on Chris Cuomo. And by the way, I like Chris Cuomo, right? He's a pretty cool dude, right?
Yeah, no, he's a straightforward guy. I mean, when he lets you speak, he's terrific.
You can speak as much as you want here on the Control Chaos Radio Show. You have a free speech here.
Great to be with you guys.
Thank you so much. God bless. All right, thank you. Roger Stone. Yeah, Roger Stone. I told you Roger Stone was going to call in. That was a fascinating interview. He thinks that the op-ed is just a bunch of BS from the New York Times. Get his book, Stone Rules. All right, it is Controlled Chaos. I'm Gary Garver. We'll be back with more right after this.
It's Controlled Chaos. Stomping the IE and the world on 1050 AM KCAA. NBC News Talk Radio.
Gary Garver, Jew of the... Oh, what can we say that's not going to piss him off? Never mind.
All right, it is Controlled Chaos. KCAA 1050 AM 106.5, 102.3 FM in the Inland Empire. I'm Gary Garver. Wow, that was a great call with Mr. Roger Stone. Get his book, Stone Rules, available on Amazon.com. He's written tons of books on conspiracies and all sorts of things. So I just want to thank him once again for calling into the Controlled Chaos Radio Show. Fascinating, fascinating.